There is an ancient secret, one that the most successful people you have ever admired, the ones living the lives you quietly long for, have never openly shared with you. And it has absolutely nothing to do with money, connections, or luck. The great thinkers who descended into the deepest layers of the human mind, Carl Jung among them, discovered this secret long before the modern world had any language for it. The most accomplished individuals on this planet are those who have figured out how to direct and govern their own consciousness. And more often than not, this knowledge has remained hidden, as though your success might somehow threaten the position of those who already possess it. But the real difference is not found in talent, academic credentials, or the opportunities that happened to cross your path. The difference is concealed in the conversation currently spinning inside your head, the one happening right now, in this very moment, as you move through your day. While you walk down the street mentally scolding yourself and replaying past mistakes on an endless loop, the people you admire are using that same inner space to develop themselves and build their next victory. While you use your inner voice to rehearse failure, they use that identical voice to rehearse success. While you speak to yourself as though you were your own worst adversary, they speak to themselves as though they were their most devoted and trusted companion. This is not empty motivational rhetoric or some naive suggestion to simply think positive thoughts. This, as Carl Jung himself pointed out, is the very mechanism through which reality is constructed and shaped. Your internal dialogue is the programming language of your entire life. And unfortunately, most people are operating on faulty software. Software loaded with viruses that were installed in their minds years ago without their awareness or permission. The wealthy, the powerful, the spiritually fulfilled, they have learned how to debug that corrupted code and install new programs that work in their favor. Drawing from the wisdom that flows through Jung's concept of the collective unconscious, they have come to understand that their thoughts do not merely reflect reality, they actively create it. While they have used this knowledge to build entire empires, you may have been using it unknowingly, only to manufacture excuses. But today, I am going to hand you the same code they have been using. Drawing from the depth psychology of Carl Jung, I am going to show you how to reprogram your mind in just 7 days, and how to stop settling for the limited life you assumed you deserved and begin constructing the life you genuinely desire. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Carl Jung. If this message speaks to something real inside you, subscribe to Carl Jung Philosophy and hit the like button, because what comes next may genuinely change the way you see yourself and the people around you. Right now, in this precise second, there is a voice inside your mind. It has been speaking to you since the moment you opened your eyes this morning. This voice has been your most faithful, and sometimes your most brutal, traveling companion for years. What most people fail to notice, or are perhaps too afraid to confront, is this. That inner conversation is constructing your lived experience, moment by moment, without pause, without rest. Approximately 60,000 thoughts pass through your mind every single day. And the vast majority of people spend roughly 90% of those thoughts simply repeating the same mental patterns they had yesterday. They wake up and the mind immediately begins playing the same worn record, the same anxieties, the same complaints, the same self-imposed limitations. But what if you could completely transform that inner dialogue in just 7 days? What if you could begin speaking to yourself the way those high-achieving individuals you admire speak to themselves, with the clarity and conviction of a genuine sage? What if you could direct those 60,000 daily thoughts toward weaving, thread by thread, the life you actually want to inhabit? Your current reality is a flawless mirror of how you have spoken to yourself up until now. If you are experiencing financial strain, listen carefully to what you have been whispering to yourself about money. If your relationships keep failing, pay close attention to the internal narrative you carry about love and your own worthiness of it. The outer world is always and without exception a direct reflection of the inner one. Most people's relationship with themselves is, tragically, an abusive one. The crushing, demeaning words they would never dare say to a friend, they direct at themselves without a moment's hesitation. But when you transform this conversation, your entire existence begins to shift around it. The real awakening is recognizing that you have been programming yourself unconsciously through your internal dialogue all along. Now you are about to learn how to do it deliberately, guided by Carl Jung's principle of bringing the shadow into the light of conscious awareness. Most people exist on autopilot. They rise and the mind immediately launches the same exhausted program. I am too tired. I am not good enough. I cannot handle this. Does any of that sound familiar? This mental noise operates like a broken radio station playing in the background of your life 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And for most people, that station plays only the saddest, most defeated songs from the archive of past failures, crushed hopes, and unresolved fears. But the power to change that station has always resided in your hands. When you begin speaking to yourself the way genuinely successful people do, everything transforms. Think of the most confident, most accomplished person you know personally. Do you honestly believe they wake up each morning and immediately begin listing all the reasons they cannot succeed? Do they spend their days consumed in self-criticism, doubting their abilities, and fixating on every possible thing that could go wrong? Of course not. They have learned to use their internal dialogue not as a tool of destruction, but as an instrument of deliberate creation. We were all taught in school how to read, write, and calculate. But not one of us was ever taught how to speak to ourselves in ways that genuinely inspire and elevate. So by default, we absorbed the patterns of the people around us, perhaps from worried parents, perhaps from anxious teachers, perhaps from a culture that confuses self-criticism with humility. Your thoughts generate your emotions. Your emotions direct your actions, and your actions deliver your results. This cycle either keeps you imprisoned or sets you entirely free. When you consciously direct your thinking, you feel different. When you feel different, you behave differently. And when you behave differently, you begin receiving completely different results from life. As Carl Jung himself emphasized, the mind cannot reliably distinguish between what is real and what is vividly imagined. When you tell yourself that you are confident and capable and worthy of success, your mind accepts this as absolute truth and begins reorganizing your entire biology around it. When you consistently speak as though you are already becoming the person you want to be, you literally embody those qualities in the present moment. But most people do the precise opposite. They rehearse failure. They practice anxiety. They reinforce their own limitations with every passing thought. They wake up and mentally plan for things to go wrong, and then they genuinely wonder why life feels so relentlessly difficult. When you change the way you speak to yourself, you change the way you treat yourself. When you change the way you treat yourself, your entire posture in the world shifts. And when your posture shifts, the world begins responding to you differently. People treat you differently. Opportunities arrive at your door through entirely different channels. This is not self-deception or performance. This is aligning your internal dialogue with who you truly are and who you are in the process of becoming. This is the conscious and deliberate breaking of old conditioned habits and the intentional construction of a new self, one chosen conversation at a time. The extraordinary beauty of this practice is that it costs nothing. You need no special equipment, no certification, no one's permission or approval. All that is required is that you begin paying genuine attention to how you speak to yourself, and that you choose a different path each time you notice the old one pulling you backward. Over the next 7 days, you are going to transform your relationship with yourself through conscious and deliberate internal dialogue. 7 days is the ideal period for beginning to fire new neural pathways and establish fresh mental templates. Why 7 days specifically? Because it is exactly the duration needed to start breaking automatic patterns. Within 7 days, you build enough momentum to genuinely feel a shift. You begin feeling different, behaving differently, and witnessing different outcomes materializing around you. Throughout these 7 days, you will move through 3 distinct levels of transformation. The first is becoming aware of how you currently speak to yourself, because most people have no conscious awareness of their inner dialogue whatsoever. The second is learning to interrupt the old patterns and replace them with new ones. The third is elevating your internal dialogue to the level of the extraordinary person you are in the process of becoming. The key to lasting success in this practice is consistency, not perfection. You do not need to catch every single negative thought. You simply need to be more conscious than unconscious, more deliberate than automatic. Every time you catch yourself and choose a better inner conversation, you are rewiring your mind and creating your new reality along the path Jung called individuation. Your environment matters enormously during these 7 days. Surround yourself with people, books, and content that support and reinforce the new inner conversation you are building. Limit your exposure to negativity, harsh criticism, and the constant messaging of limitation. Remember, you are attempting to install a new operating system in your mind, and that process becomes dramatically easier when you're not being continuously bombarded by the old programming from every direction. Now let us begin with the first 2 days. Days 1 and 2 are the days of awareness and intervention. Here you become a neutral and impartial observer of your own thinking. Most people have become so deeply fused with their thoughts that they actually mistake themselves for their thoughts. But as Jung observed, you are not your thoughts. You are the consciousness that has the power to choose its thoughts. Your task during the first 2 days is beautifully simple. Catch yourself. When you notice yourself speaking to yourself in critical, negative, or limiting ways, simply notice it. You do not need to change anything yet. Just observe. Cultivate a genuine sense of curiosity about your own patterns. How frequently do you criticize yourself throughout the day? What specific situations or triggers activate this negative inner conversation? What are the most common limiting phrases your mind tends to generate? When you catch yourself, use the power of the deliberate pause. Draw a slow, conscious breath. Simply acknowledge that you are observing your thought rather than being controlled by it. This awareness, this act of stepping back and seeing rather than being swept away, is the very first gateway to freedom. Most people move through entire days without once noticing what they are actually telling themselves. But you are different now. You are waking up to your own inner architecture. Rather than judging yourself for having negative thoughts, approach them with the curious detachment of a scientist. Ask yourself, where did this particular thought originate? Is this thought genuinely serving me, or is it quietly working against me? Is this thought rooted in something real and